Unmute.
I have this.
Unmute. There, see, I have.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Cascella, and it's my privilege and joy to welcome you to this service where we're honoring the life of Kennard Eugene Haworth. And the hope for today is really that this would be a celebration of his life. Kennard lived a long and a good life, and there is always sadness when we miss out on someone being with us on earth, but today we want it to be a day of celebration. I am Kennard and Marjean's son-in-law. I'm married to Elaine, for those of you who know the family but don't know me, and I love the chance to be able to lead us through this time today with some great stuff that the family has gotten ready for this. I have always appreciated Kennard very much and appreciated joining this family. And one of the things when you join a family is you learn their different patterns and things stand out to you that maybe wouldn't stand out within the family. And I want to tell a story today that is not touched on in the stuff that's coming later. And one of the things that I loved about visiting Kennard is that you always had to be prepared to have the game of, if you were starting from scratch, what vehicles would you purchase that would give you the best quality for your stage of life? And you had to have good reasons for this. You had to have clear examples of how you would use them. And most importantly, you had to have good evidence from Consumer Reports, which was right up there, maybe just a little bit below the Bible in Kennard's mind. Consumer Reports was really important to him. He was the kind of person who would buy his cars new and then he would save them and drive them for a long time, maintaining them really well. And I remember he bought up here a 2004 Honda Pilot, and not long after he bought it, he started reading in Consumer Reports about vehicle stability control, and he kept talking about it all the time. And then one day he said, "Hey, you know, the new Pilots have vehicle stability control." And I knew what was coming after that, because he then purchased the 2009 Honda Pilot that had the vehicle stability control, so he could be up to where he needed to be in the Consumer Reports lingo. So those are the kinds of people that's the kind of person that Kennard was, who loved attention to detail and things that worked and lasted well. And I think he himself worked and lasted well. Join me in prayer as we begin today. Lord Jesus Christ, we love you, and we love the family and the friends that are represented on these screens today. And I thank you that even though it's difficult in these times to gather in person, there is this gift of gathering probably more people than we would have been able to gather otherwise from all over the place. And so I pray your richest blessings on each one here today, on Marjean and each one in the family, and pray that we would honor you as we remember Kennard's life today. In Jesus' name, amen. We want to start today with a hymn that is on video for us, and this is from Bill and Linda Seberg, who were, as Lauren says, Dad's favorite vocalists singing Dad's favorite hymn, Beneath the Cross of Jesus.
Beneath the cross of Jesus, I gladly take my stand. The shadow of a mighty rock within a weary land. A home within the wilderness, a rest upon the way, from the burning of the content to let the world go by, to know nor pain nor loss. My sinful self, my only shame, my glory, all the cross.
Thank you to Bill and Linda for recording that specifically for our service today. I want to introduce Annie Haworth, who's one of Lauren's daughters, and she is going to read scripture today.
Psalm 19, 1-4. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words, whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world.
Thanks, Annie. We get next what really is going to be the heart of our service today, the way that we really want to remember and honor Kennard today. And a huge thank you to Noel and to his daughter Acacia, who spent a lot of time scanning and gathering pictures, as well as others in the family, and compiling this video together that will be a slideshow of pictures, as well as a narrated story, bringing a lot of memories of Kennard's life, narrated by Noel and by Lauren and by Elaine. Just want you to settle in and enjoy this. And this is about 24 minutes. And it's really, like I said today, going to be the heart of our remembrance today.
Dad was born on August 11th, 1926 in Southern California. His family was living in Long Beach at the time, but would soon make the Whittier and La Habra areas home. Dad was the youngest of 4 kids. Wellman was born in 1912, followed soon by Cleo, and a few years later by Lois. Wellman and Cleo were born in Springbrook, Oregon, now part of Newburgh, and Lois was born in Whittier, California. Dad's parents, Huber and Lola Haworth, met and were married in Newburgh. Huber had a fruit drying company in Springbrook, and Lola was a school teacher and principal at the now abandoned Springbrook School. She was a contemporary and friend of Mabel Rush, the namesake of Mabel Rush Elementary in Newburgh, where 2 of her great-grandchildren later attended school. Dad was the baby of the family, being 14 years younger than his brother. He was the sole surviving member of his immediate family for 31 years. Dad was, by all accounts, a freckled, red-headed kid. Portraits taken early in his life seemed to be retouched to remove the freckles, but candid pictures tell a different story. He always took credit for and was proud of his 2 strawberry blonde granddaughters. When he was about 10, Dad was skateboarding down the long, sloping driveway to their home and leapt for the limb of a tree, but didn't quite make it. The resulting elbow fracture healed, but for the rest of his life, he could no longer fully straighten his right arm. Dad always enjoyed having animals around. There were multiple cats and large dogs in childhood pictures, and Dad got a Doberman when he returned from Italy after World War II. He named her Cara, which means deer in Italian. We certainly had a succession of cats through the years, and a dog or 2 as well. During the Depression, Dad was given a .22 rifle, which he used to supplement meat rations during the Depression. He would go up into the Whittier Hills and shoot rabbits. He didn't get them all, though. Noel has seen their descendants. Dad also talked about being sent out to get rhubarb for his mom, which apparently grew wild nearby. He spoke fondly of rhubarb pie, though he didn't get to eat it much. His mom saved some of his report cards in an old purse. He was a B student with a good smattering of A's and a few C's in there as well. He attended Bailey School in Whittier, then Whittier High School. Then, in 1939, Dad was sent to a boarding school in Westtown, Pennsylvania, where he finished his high school education, graduating in 1940. A couple of nice portraits of him were taken during his time in Pennsylvania, which show him with a full head of wavy hair parted on the right side. He was later fond of saying that his hair waved goodbye. In the 50s and 60s, his hairline receded, leaving him with his fringe benefit for the rest of his life. While Dad had good memories from his time at Westtown, he was sent there against his will. Apparently, his mom did not like his girlfriend and solved that problem by sending him to the other side of the country. Dad's brother, Wellman, died in an accident in 1933, 1 month after he was married. Dad was 6 years old. The whole family bore the grief of that tragedy for the remainder of their lives. In 1938 or 39, the California Yearly Meeting decided to start a youth camp in the Southern Sierras, Quaker Meadow Camp. You can't tell the story of our dad's life without Quaker Meadow, and camp holds a special place in all of our hearts. An early picture shows him with his dad digging the first well at camp. Like all young men his age in the U.S., World War II interrupted his life. Bearing the Quaker conviction that war is never the answer to conflict, he successfully requested alternative service with the American Friends Service Committee and found himself in Ortona, Italy in 1947 with the task of rebuilding an orphanage. Ortona is on the east side of Italy along the Adriatic coast, almost due east of Rome. With the only deep water port in the area, it was a strategic location and the site of a devastating battle in late 1943 between German and Canadian forces. When Dad arrived, the destruction was still being repaired. Pictures showed level and damaged buildings, rubble on the ground, and a bombed-out breakwater in the port. Though farming had resumed, they were not able yet to produce food enough for the local population. So in addition to the work on the orphanage, Dad was tasked with distributing food provided by the U.S. They were given a garage of military trucks that had been abandoned when the Allies pushed rapidly north. By scavenging parts, they were able to keep enough vehicles running to meet their needs. Dad said he could have become rich by selling food on the black market. There's a good reason they put those Quakers in charge of the food distribution. It was, however, a dangerous job. There wasn't a strong state government in place after the fall of Mussolini, and many towns were under local rule, each prioritizing their own needs. Dad was once directed by his local guide to duck, hit the gas, and drive through an armed roadblock to avoid being hijacked, which is exactly what he did. At some point in time during his time in Italy, his dad, Huber, shipped him a camera. For the remainder of his life, a camera was never far from reach. He took a whole series of pictures, not only in Ortona, but throughout Europe as he traveled. Most of them are black and white, but he even took some early color Kodachrome slides. In addition to Italy, he traveled through Antwerp or Belgium, Paris, and Switzerland. One of Dad's favorite stories from his time in Italy took place when they were called to drive a mother in labor to the hospital. They hopped into one of the trucks with Dad driving, picked up the mom-to-be, and headed out. The hospital was not close, and en route, a healthy baby girl named Angela was born in the bed of his truck. Dad was invited to Angela's first birthday party and, of course, took pictures. Though a teetotaler for his entire life, when the family offered Dad and his buddies some of their new wine from the first grape harvest after the war, he couldn't say no. His friend, however, apparently said yes too much, because he later told Dad to take over the wheel on the way back because he was seeing two roads. Mom and Dad met at Quaker Meadow in the 50s. Mom grew up in the Friends Church in Lindsay, California, not far from where Highway 190 heads up into the mountains towards Quaker Meadow. They were married on June 30th, 1956 at the chapel in Quaker Meadow. Throughout the 60s, Dad continued to work at camp during the summers, managing the operation there for 3 or 4 summers, including the summer of 1963, which is where Noel celebrated his first birthday. In 1960, Dad was one of the leaders of a friend's high school team that traveled up to Kotzebue, Alaska, where a church had been established with the native Inuit people. Ron Woodward, a lifetime friend and backpacking buddy, was already there teaching high school. The Alaska trip was to help with a building project, but Dad's pictures mostly showed the people, their colorful lifestyle in the summer, their smiles, clothes, human-powered trampolines made of seal skin, the process of smoking fish, and their dogs. Like many of his favorite pictures, these made it into his slide trays and were shown in periodic slideshows to his family along with his commentary. All of us kids loved family slideshows and were surprised to learn that friends hated seeing slides. We certainly never felt that way. Dad's pictures transported us to places we wanted to see, and we loved the family time.
After their marriage, Mom and Dad lived in a small house trailer in Fresno. Mom taught school while Dad finished his degree at Fresno State College, which is now Fresno State University, and started teaching fifth grade. He continued teaching while working on his master's degree in psychology, which he completed in 1972. Soon thereafter, he began a new position as a psychologist for the Fresno Unified School District, a job he kept until his retirement in 1991. In 1962, I was born, followed by Lauren in 1964 and Elaine in 1968. By then, Mom and Dad had moved to a small house on Andrews Street. The five of us lived in that house until the summer of 1977, when we moved to a house on Sample in northwest Fresno, nearer the new church location. Dad was working full-time, and Mom went back to school and to work. Throughout his life, Dad was a regular on the Quaker Meadow board, participating in the life of the camp. He made many friends there over the years. After his retirement from Fresno Unified School District, one of those friends thought it would be a good idea to put him back into a paid role for Quaker Meadow, and he was named the executive director in 1992, a position he held until he retired for a second time in 1997, this time for good. One of the roles Dad fulfilled for QM was removing aged and dying trees that became a hazard to the buildings, particularly in the winters. Located in an old growth forest of red and white fir, which aren't particularly strong trees, there have been many buildings damaged or destroyed by fallen trees over the years. After the original chapel was destroyed by a tree and the snow during the winter of 1951 and 52, Dad began figuring out how to safely fell the dying trees near the buildings. He was often joined by his brother-in-law Peter and his father-in-law Burl. This era was the first time the chainsaw became available, so they bought some and put them to good use. They knew firsthand the work required to drop a tree with an axe or a two-person handsaw. Each spring and fall found Dad at camp filling this vital role. Dad became known as the tree man for QM, and he put us to work too as soon as we were able. Not too many kids were driving wedges and operating chainsaws in junior high, but we thought nothing of it. Dad was also active at the Fresno Friends Church for the entire time he lived in Fresno. When the pastor, Barney Schaefer, left in the early 1970s, Dad participated in the search for our new pastor and helped Orville Winters and his family move down from Oregon when he accepted the call. Though we attended different schools, his son Rich became a good friend of mine. Dad and Mom stayed active at Friends Community, filling various roles as needed through the years until they left Fresno. While we were growing up, Dad sometimes transported kids all the way up to camp, or took us to a truck stop on the 99 freeway where we met the bus going to camp. When the Elementary Boys Brigade group went backpacking, he helped lead the group. Later, when I was in high school, our group would go to Yosemite National Park for the spring bike rally. He backpacked with all our youth groups into the Dinky Lake area. Since it involved mountains and camping, Dad helped. When the Yosemite bears poked around our food during the night, Dad made a name for himself among the high schoolers by banging some pots and pans together and chasing the bears off. It wasn't his first rodeo. Maybe more to the point, when it came to church and to QM, if it was something he felt he could help with, he did. During our move to the house on Sample in 1977, Dad pushed himself too hard and ended up in bed with pneumonia. I don't think it was too serious. He made a recovery soon thereafter, but part of the reason could have been the contents of his garage. Dad was famous for the garage. You could barely walk around in it. It contained so much stuff. He never got around to cleaning it out, and when we moved to Sample, he just dumped the contents from the Andrews house into the new garage. During the years at Sample, it just got more and more cluttered. I spent an entire week cleaning it out when they moved to Oregon, and we made it clear that the garage on Cherry Street in Newburgh had to accept their car or else. I'm not sure what the else was, maybe family mayhem and discord, But the car did in fact fit into the single car garage for the entire time at that house, if only barely. We always attributed Dad's reluctance to throw anything out to growing up during the Depression, which may be true, though I don't think his family experienced too much difficulty or hardship during that period of time. The year before the move to Sample, Dad was diagnosed with a dangerous skin cancer, a melanoma, on his left forearm. Melanoma is one of the most aggressive forms of cancer, and during that time, treatment was to remove as much as possible. If it had spread, it would have killed him quickly, perhaps within months. They were very aggressive as well in the surgery, completely removing a wide strip of skin on his arm all the way down to the bone, attempting to replace it with another strip grafted from his thigh. The healing of his skin took quite a few months, and he bore the scars for the rest of his life. Though the biopsy showed the cancer seemed to have been contained, the uncertainty of his condition following the surgery was difficult for all of us. Mom's decision to go back to work was largely because of the uncertainty of the original melanoma diagnosis. And then for the rest of his life, Dad was careful to wear long sleeves, a hat, and sunscreen, which we all remember. Dad had a lifetime love for the mountains and backpacking. Having summers off, of course, helped. In the 1950s, Dad and our Uncle Peter started going into camp during the winter and backpacking during the summer. Dad did 3 Trans-Sierra trips from the west to the east during his life, each culminating on Mount Whitney and going out on Whitney Portal. The first was in 1966 with Ron Woodward and Ron Harvey, the second with Lauren and myself in the summer of 1979, and the third with a larger group, including all of Ron's family, Steve Faber, and Elaine in 1986. There were many, many trips over the years, and Dad invited those around him to join his adventures when he could. He continued hiking and backpacking after the move to Oregon. Even after he could no longer go, he loved hearing about our adventures and seeing our pictures from the times in the forest. One trip to Mineral King in 1972 stands out, with Dad, Lauren, our friend Rich Winters, and myself. It almost did Lauren in. He was only 8 years old. Struggling to get over Sawtooth Pass before sunset, we lost the trail in the dark and spent the night on the Razorback below the pass, sleeping a few short feet from the precipice. I didn't do so well myself at 10 years old, but somehow, through all our adventures, we were both bitten by the same bug as Dad, as was Elaine, love for the mountains. Since Dad was always the one taking the pictures, we have an amazing record of all the things he was involved with, but only a few pictures of him, at least until Lauren and I began taking pictures in the late 1970s. I've got many, many boxes of slides and pictures Dad took through the years, which are going to take a while to be sorted out. Systematic organization was not a strong point with Dad. It was more like, pull the good pictures out and look at them, which, come to think of it, is not a bad way to do things.
Dad always had a sense of style. He liked being well-dressed and appreciated a good suit. I remember him speaking out many times about why it was important to look good. For some reason, he was convinced that if people saw you well-dressed, they would view you as important or good or something. We're not sure where this came from, but it definitely was part of who he was. In the 1970s, one of the tricks that motivational speakers would pull was to tell people their profession by how they were dressed. Dad apparently was the subject of this trick more than once. They invariably missed it with him, guessing salesman rather than teacher or psychologist. Even when we opened his closet in the health center after his death, you could immediately tell the colors and patterns he liked, as well as his favorite places to shop. In just a few short years in the mid-'80s, we kids moved out of the house, Noel to Southern California, Lauren to medical school in Loma Linda, and me to George Fox College. Dad and Mom continued to stay active at Friends Community Church and at Quaker Meadow. Dad retired at age 65. In his retirement, he developed a fondness for making elderberry jelly from Quaker Meadow elderberries. He continued this hobby until he was unable to do so, first collecting the berries from Quaker Meadow, then getting them from Lauren and Jennifer's place in Reedley. He blessed many people with his elderberry jam. Lauren's family carries on this tradition. In the summer of 2006, Mom and Dad celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary at Quaker Meadow, where they were married. Their extended family was fairly scattered by then, and it was good to camp together in that sacred place and celebrate Mom and Dad and God's faithfulness to our family. Dad and Mom moved to the Friendsview Retirement Community in Newberg, Oregon in December of 2003. True to form, Dad stayed active, no doubt helped along by the new friends they found. Along the way, Dad had treatment for another cancer, this time prostate cancer. With others, he organized Friendsview's participation in Relay for Life for the American Cancer Society. In 2008, a picture he took during Relay for Life, a nighttime walk on a track lit with paper bag luminaries and the moon, won a photography award for senior artwork in Oregon and was included in the Ageless Art Calendar. His picture and the large award ribbon hung on his wall for the rest of his life. One year he was named Co-Volunteer of the Year at Friendsview for his work with Relay for Life. He also loved making pins in the workshop, participated in daily exercise programs, and was a member at Newberg Friends Church. During the last few years of his life, Dad was plagued with decreasing strength and struggled with his ability to walk, something he eventually fully lost. He was moved to assisted living and, at the end, to the health center at Friendsview. Losing ability to walk certainly wasn't from lack of trying. Each time he was moved, he wasn't happy about it. It was, after all, an indication of his decline. But after it happened, he accepted it and didn't complain again. This last year was especially hard because of the pandemic. Because he was in the health center, we couldn't go in and see him. Lauren set up an Alexa video link, and we were able to drop in on him frequently to chat. He ended most of those times by saying, "Adios for now." With his health declining and his ability to follow conversations waning, Mom, all of us kids, and all his grandchildren participated in a family blessing last September, a month or so after his 94th birthday. We shared memories of what we appreciated about him and the legacy he was leaving. Dad didn't talk much, but after Lauren shared, Dad said, "As you know, I'm no spring chicken." He got the laugh he was looking for and continued, "How much longer I have on this earth is problematical." Out of the silence that followed, Lauren told how he learned to pray a prayer for Dad that was difficult at first, but became easier and wider with time, encompassing other family and friends too. The prayer is that God would give us all, including Dad, the right number of days, neither too few nor too many. We trust God did exactly that. Dad left us for home on April 20th, 2021. As per his wishes, his body was donated to OHSU for research. We hope his body will help to gain some knowledge about the mysterious neurological disorder he suffered. This summer, all three of his children, many grandchildren, and a smattering of others plan to do a Trans-Sierra backpack trip. We plan a day over at the infamous Shangri-La Lake, named by Ron on the 1986 trip. We will climb Mount Whitney and go out Whitney Portal. Dad loved hearing the plans for this trip and the similar trip being planned by the Woodward family to scatter Ron's ashes. Dad, you said take lots of pictures. We will.
Dad showed us how to use the gifts we are given for God to further his kingdom. He taught each of us will have to answer to God for how we choose to live. He encouraged us to keep a camera close. He showed us how to live life in community. He showed us the beauty of a high mountain lake or a snowy landscape of a late afternoon thunderstorm. He introduced us to the stars. He showed us how to never keep a grudge.
He showed us what unconditional love looks like. We had quite a bit of strife in our relationship, but truly, I never worried about or even considered that I could do anything that would cause me not to be loved, not to belong to our family. What a gift to have a dad who reflected God's unconditional love and belonging. He introduced us to God, the Creator, and nurtured that connection to God as well as a love for the created world. He taught us to love animals. One time he paid a fair amount of money for a surgery on one of our cats because I cried at the vet's office when the doctor said the cat would die without the surgery. One fun thing I did with Dad after he was in assisted living was sneak kittens into his room, which he thoroughly loved. He taught us to be generous. I saw this in the way he used his time and money with others and with me. 18 years later, the garden beds he built for me are still being put to good use. There were so many other gifts over the years.
One of my favorite stories about Dad was told to me by Brad, my youth leader and the most influential person outside of my parents in my early spiritual formation. Dad had opposed hiring Brad as our youth pastor because Brad had been divorced. Brad thought he was qualified, but Dad thought he wasn't. Consensus at the meeting, however, was to hire Brad. Dad never mentioned this to me, but Brad told me years later, appropriately at Quaker Meadow, where Brad was directing a camp and I was one of his counselors. He said Dad never said another word about his opposition, and that whenever he needed something for the youth, he always went to Dad first because he knew Dad would support him 100%. This is how Dad was and how I want to be as well. We stand on his shoulders. We are blessed to have known him as Dad or husband or grandpa and as friend.
At the end of Revelation, there is a picture of the new heavens with the stream of living water coming from the throne of God, watering 12 trees of life, one for each month of the year. No longer is the way banned as it was in Eden. No longer is it a curse to eat of the fruit and live eternally. Instead, it says the fruit of those trees is for the healing of nations. This is a beautiful picture of God's eternal blessing and care. I'm not sure what the new heaven and new earth are going to be like. We just get glimpses of them in the Bible. But I do know I'm looking forward to being with God and other family and friends who love Jesus. And Dad's on that list. I'm hoping for new mountains and trails where we can hike them together again, eternally young, in the presence of God.
Adios for now.
Dad.
Thank you so much to Noel and Acacia, to Elaine and Lauren, and to Noel for bringing that together. I was laughing a bit at the connections that are going on. Elaine told the story about crying to have a cat have surgery, and the little kitten that she snuck in with the picture that Noel put in there are that kitten we still have and is in the vet right now, having had surgery yesterday. So like all these things come full circle. And I also wanted to make sure that you could see this picture that was in Kennard's room for so long, this award-winning picture of the Relay for Life, which I thought was great. Today I'm also wearing Kennard's shirt, one of Kennard's shirt. It's from REI, which seems incredibly appropriate. I also could have worn the suit that he bought me, but a suit seemed a little bit too much for a Zoom service, so I went with Kennard's shirt. Let me read Psalm 27, verses 1 through 4. The Lord is my light and my salvation, so why should I be afraid? The Lord is my fortress, protecting me from danger, so why should I tremble? When evil people come to devour me, when my enemies and foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I'm attacked, I will remain confident. The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple. When we were planning this service, Lauren said it would be good to share about the hope that we have in Christ, and I'm really glad to have the chance to do that today. And I chose Psalm 27 because it is so hopeful, and it's also so honest about the harsh realities of this life. As Elaine said in the video, Kennard's last year was really difficult. In the middle of COVID, his body failed him to the point that he needed to be moved downstairs to the health center at Friendsview. And none of us could help move his stuff or see him because of the excellent precautions that Friendsview was taking to keep people safe. His world was challenging, and it was changing, and it was getting smaller. And he didn't like it. And he had to face it apart from his family. It was not easy. But as Lauren spoke about and as Elaine spoke about, has proved true so many times in his life, while he could be quite vocal about not wanting something to happen, once it did happen, he was able to move on with no grudges. And I don't know if I've met many people who were a better example to me of releasing things when it didn't go how he wanted. The Lord is my light and salvation, the psalm says, so why should I be afraid? The Lord is my fortress, protecting me from danger, so why should I tremble? Maybe too often we read these declarations of hope all by themselves, and we start to feel somewhere inside that if we could just muster up the right kind of faith or hope or trust in God, that bad things wouldn't happen. And if we do that, we're forgetting to keep reading the rest of the psalm and take in the big picture. As the psalm says, evil people will try to devour us. We will feel attacked. We will sometimes have to face a failing body during a pandemic all by ourselves. And feeling fear or trembling in the face of hard things is not a failure, it's normal. And Kennard was feeling some of that fear at the end, along with a fair amount of pain. Elaine had to see that more than me. When I visited him the morning before he died, early before work, just he and I in the room, he was agitated and he was trying to say something that I couldn't understand. And so I sat down next to him and I put my hand on his shoulder and I reminded him that God was with him. And I prayed, inviting God to show up in ways Kennard could feel and asking for strength and for peace. And it was this holy moment watching him settle and calm and to feel God's presence as a stronghold, making that room in the health center a temple of God's presence. And I've long believed that trust in God is not about mustering up some kind of steel-armored denial. It's not about ignoring hard stuff or denying our fear in order to prove our spirituality. Trust in God is reminding ourselves that God is present. God cares, God loves, God desires to live in us and to walk beside us. Trust in God is allowing the Holy Spirit to transform us because of what Jesus has done. We are God's masterpiece, says the New Living Translation version of Ephesians 2:10. God has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the things God planned for us long ago. And hope and faith and trust are really not about the circumstances of our lives. Hope springs from being a new creation in Jesus, becoming the masterpiece God intends us to be, and joining what God is doing in this world. It's knowing God and enjoying God forever. The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. Hope builds in us a desire to be in God's presence. And the Psalms and the New Testament and billions of lives, including Kennard's, are evidence that we are all invited to live in God's presence now and forever. That is our hope in Christ, our hope for Kennard, and our hope for ourselves. Amen. We want to have a time of open sharing of memories for Kennard, but we want to begin that time first with a video from the Zoom meeting that Elaine mentioned back in September, a virtual gathering last September of all the Haworth kids and kids-in-law and the 10 grandkids. We had the chance in that meeting to tell Kennard that we loved him and what we were going to remember. And so enjoy in this video some of the grandkids' memories. Not all the grandkids shared at that point. Some of them sent letters or spoke to him at other points. But we'll do that, and then we'll start a time of open sharing.
So I had three memories that I wanted to share really with Grandpa. So let me think. The first memory I have was when Grandpa taught me how to make arrows for shooting bows and arrows for archery. That was something he did up at Quaker Meadow. and it was fun for him to teach me how to do that when I was younger. Let me think. One of the other ones that I wanted to share was I used to always watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune with Grandpa, and actually with a lot of our family, and we tried to answer the questions, and I was never good at it, but Grandpa was good at it, my dad was good at it, so that was always fun. And then another memory that I have with Grandpa that I liked a lot was picking elderberries and making elderberry jelly. He tried to teach me a few times, and I never really got it, but hopefully now I'd be mature enough to learn it. My family still does that. My mom and sisters like to make elderberry jelly. So those were some of my memories of Grandpa that I liked a lot. Love you, Grandpa.
Grandpa, you used to read me stacks and stacks of books, and I really appreciated that. There's lots of pictures of us together doing that. And when you would read me Junie B. Jones, you would correct her grammar, which was pretty funny. And I still love reading, and I think that's in part because you would read with me all the time, and I really appreciate that.
So yes, also with the reading, you did that all the time with us, and that was wonderful. And just like Noah, making jelly, watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. But also like Auntie Lane, you were on the first backpacking trip I ever went on. And now our parents, your kids, take us backpacking still because that's just a love that you've shared and instilled with them, an appreciation for the nature. So thank you for that. And the other thing that I have loved and have gotten from you is the Haworth sense of humor. My friends may not all appreciate it, but I do, and I love your constant jokes that you even still share with us. So thank you for that.
Hi, Grandpa. I was thinking about the stories that you'd always tell us of the giant trees that you would fell and how you'd align them up so they would hit pop cans perfectly. I always love listening to your stories. And the other thing I was thinking about is you always had fun little like trinket games for us to play, like I don't know what they're called, the little handle. It has the stick that you're supposed to get the ball onto. And I remember being a kid and you showing us like the best techniques for those. And that was always really fun. So it's good to see you virtually, and I love you, Grandpa.
Well, I think for me, it's hard to pick just like one memory that I really love about spending time with you, Grandpa. But you know, I remember going to Sportsman Lake with you. I remember on a different occasion skipping rocks across the lake, and you were the only one that was able to skip it all the way across. It was like 12 skips, and nobody else could even get close. I would do like 2 skips and be done, and my dad would get like 5 or 6 and be done. You got like 12 and got it all the way to the other side, and it was really impressive. But I really think, like, in terms of the impact you've had on my life, and I think the life of other people, has been just the example that you put forward. And it's what everybody else has mentioned too, you know, humor, your love for the outdoors and for Quaker Meadow, your love for backpacking. There's just all sorts of things that I see in every single one of our individual families, as well as our extended family here. And that example is just carried forward, and I see that in everybody, all the Haworths that are here. And so I see you in our family just as much as, you know, as an individual. So that's really cool seeing that example that you put forward for everybody, and how much you've impacted all of our lives. And I love you, Grandpa.
Hi, Grandpa. I had 3 memories to share. The first one is one of my very first memories, so I'm sure it's not accurate. But I remember staying with you and Grammy when my mom was on a backpacking trip, probably with Uncle Noel and Uncle Lauren. And I remember I was playing like in a kiddie pool and somehow got under the water and got scared and didn't know how to get out. And I remember you coming in and helping me out of the water and feeling very safe in that moment. Another memory, so unlike a lot of your other grandkids, I didn't grow up going to Quaker Meadow. So one of my first times there was for your 50th wedding anniversary. And I remember hearing all these stories about you and all the time that you spent there and all you did to help Quaker Meadow become what it is. And I just remember thinking that was such a cool legacy. And then the third memory I have is coming home often from college and now grad school and getting to come visit you. And you always remember to ask about what I'm up to and how I'm doing. And now in recent years, how Nolan's doing. And I remember one specific time when I don't remember what, something medical had just happened and you were stable, but it had maybe been a little harder stretch, and you were telling some stories about a lot of different things in the past. And I remember you shared about how life is a lot different now, but still good. And I really liked that outlook on life. Love you.
Well, I can share something. Hi, Grandpa. I have always loved hearing about your photography and seeing all your pictures. I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, there's a picture that you took of the beach at Twin Rocks that was up in the dining hall there. I remember as a kid, when my mom told me that you were the one who took that, I was very proud of it. And I like to tell all my friends that my grandpa took that photo. And now I really like to take pictures too. And yeah, I love that when I would go to visit you, that you'd always tell me about the ones that you took that were up on the walls there. I really admired that.
Ray, who is one of Noel's daughters, would like to share live at this point and to begin our time of open sharing. So we'll have her share, and then I'll give some instructions for how we can share.
Thank you, Uncle Greg. I just wanted to share a memory live, since I didn't share a memory in that Zoom. The day I found out that Grandpa passed away, I was reading an article with my English students, and it really reminded me of him. And it ended with this quote from the historian Howard Zimmer. He said, "The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory." One of my favorite memories of Grandpa is one time when I visited him in Oregon. I interviewed him about his time in Italy for a journalism project I did in college. And he told me that story about the woman who was in his truck. And the way he told me at the time was that he was driving and she was in the back of the truck with some other people, and he went over a bump in the road and then heard a baby crying and knew that she had given birth in the back of his truck and they weren't going to make it to the hospital. And he also told me a lot of other stories about his life at that point. That quote, I think, really reminds me of him because when he was faced with difficult decisions, he always tried to make the right choice, even if it was a difficult one. And I kind of pictured in my head all those right choices kind of piling up and creating this legacy that we're able to celebrate today. So that's just made him a huge Titan role model in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. So we do want to try on Zoom to have a chance for open sharing of memories as well. So we're going to invite you in a moment to feel free to unmute and speak. Zoom is always a little tricky and awkward for things like this, and we're probably going to have somebody speak over someone else, and that's okay. We're going to give each other grace, and just stop if you notice that someone else is speaking and let the other one go, and you can have a turn after that. If you can introduce yourself first, we're recording the whole service for the family to be able to remember. So we invite you to share memories as you want to do that.
Well, like some of you probably, first of all, my name is Jim Jackson. I'm here in Newburgh. I actually remember the very first day that I met Kennard. It was at the end of a Quaker Meadow camp, Saturday, August 13th, 1977. During that week, I had Noel as a camper. I was there representing George Fox as well as being a counselor. And at the end of that week, and it's always a unique week at end and beginnings of week at Quaker Meadow, as some of you know. I was talking to Kennard afterwards before we got on the buses and things like that. And we were having this conversation. I don't remember what it was about, but a fellow camper by the name of Pam, happens to be Pam Jackson now, saw me talking to her. She was so impressed with how I was talking to this elderly gentleman. That was her. That's from her, not me. Of course, he was only in his 40s or early 50s by then. I'm sure we were talking about what a pain Noel had been for the week. No, kidding. Anyway, the end of that story is that a year later, Pam and I were there at Quaker Meadow on our honeymoon. Through the years, I got to know Kennard or the Haworth family a little bit, Elaine coming through George Fox. I was in the admissions office, then a few years later in the financial aid office. Then when they moved up here to town, to Newburgh, Kennard and Margene, is when I really got to know them in my annual official visits for fundraising for George Fox. And that's when I got to hear the connection, the very strong connection with Quaker Meadow, and how important that was to him and the family. And a little bit about Italy. And very seldom did I get away without a jar of elderberry jam, the aforementioned. And that was always a blessing to meet with these fine people that I appreciated it so much. And through the years, getting to know his gentle spirit and the twinkle in his eye, literally and figuratively. And he was such a joy to visit with. Appreciated him very much.
If I can jump in here, Kennard and the camera. A number of years back, I think it was in '05, my wife and I put together a seniors trip to Branson, Missouri. And that trip, although it was extremely enjoyable for all of us, lasted in memories because of Kennard's camera. He took pictures of people in our group everywhere we went. And even to this day, when I look back at some of those snapshots, and I've got some in my photo file, it brought back amazing memories of a very special trip for all of us. Just love you folks. Thank you for letting me share.
Hi, I can speak. My name is Allegra. I'm Noel's youngest daughter. I think I'm grandchild number 7 or something. But one of the strawberry blondes, which as a kid I didn't really like because I was always teased for it. But as I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate it, and I'm thankful to Grandpa for my hair now because it's what makes me unique. I just wanted to share, I took a class a couple semesters ago called Psychology of Family. And in that class, I had a task to make a family tree, but I was tracking traits of my family rather than just blood connections. And I was able to circle every single person on my dad's side as a Christian, as a believer, all the way down from Grandpa. So I thought that was really amazing. That's the legacy that he left and set up for us that I don't think many people can say. Every single person in their family is saved. So I feel grateful to Grandpa for having that be my dad's legacy and then giving that to us. Also, my entire life, like people were talking about, is documented on photos because of my grandpa. If he didn't take it, my dad took it because my grandpa taught him how. So I'm thankful that everything is documented for us to see.
It's always hard to know how long to wait. It's even harder on Zoom, so I'll give it just another minute and see if anybody wants to share.
Hi, My name's Sam Morris here, and I'm outside the family, but really happy to be a part of this family. It's just amazing listening to Craig lead this narration about Ken's life. It's just been amazing. I didn't know all the stories myself, but I met Noel. We were both working at Boeing and Advanced Structures, and we found out we had hiking and backpacking in common. So he invited me one time or a couple of times to go up to Fresno and go hiking with his family, his father. And I remember we hopped into my plane, flew up to Fresno, and we met Ken and Margene. We were at their house the day before we were going to go hiking. And we were assembling all of Ken's gear on the floor, ready for the backpack. And it was his birthday. And I says, well, Ken, how old are you? Because I just had no idea. And he said, I'm 70 years old. And at that time, I was absolutely amazed. I says, how can somebody 70 years old be going backpacking? Because it's just not an easy feat. But we got all the gear together, drove up to we went to Kaiser Wilderness, I think, on that particular trip. And we hiked into, I think it was Twin Lakes. And later on, I think Lauren showed up and Elaine showed up as well on that particular trip. And we just had a great time. We got to see a number of things, Potter Pass, Kaiser Peak, George Lake, Jewel Lake, and had a great time. I remember we cooked dinner, and Noel and Ken were saying, God, this just doesn't taste good, and it was all dehydrated food that had been prepared ahead of time. And I said, well, try some of this. And I had some garlic salt with me, and boy, that made the dinner. I'm telling you, it was a lot of fun. But being able to meet the family, Ken and Margene were just so memorable, gracious, sharing and generous at their house. For me, actually a total stranger to them, but I think we were all together in spirit for everything that we ever did. Any event, I really appreciate Noel getting together with me and inviting me to participate in this farewell to Ken, a fine man, and going to be hard to beat. I did get to see Quaker Meadows. I never participated in that event, but it was really a treat. I took my wife up there to show her the facility at one time, and we just had a really nice time remembering all of the good times we had with Ken and Margene and Lauren and Elaine. So thank you for letting me participate, and God bless all of you. Just been great.
I'll share next. My name's Lisa, friend of Kennard and Margene. Gosh, this is so emotional. I think everyone who knew him was touched in a really great way. And my life is better because I knew Kennard. He was an amazing man of God. He loved me the way I think Jesus would love. He always gave me quality time. He always listened well. The wisdom that he gave was always godly wisdom. And I didn't cross mountains backpacking with him, but I got a couple day trips in at Quaker Meadow. And I'm just grateful for the man of God he was. And I don't know that we'll ever really know how many people in the periphery that he actually touched. So I'm grateful for the wisdom and the love that he gave me. And I'll miss him.
Hi, I'm Tasha Woodward, and I'm the daughter of Ron Woodward, who was in a lot of the pictures of Quaker Meadow. And just one of them, I have many awesome memories of Kennard. And when I was in my early 30s, I was living in Oregon in Portland, and we got to go on a trip with my dad, and Kennard offered to drive us down in his Honda Pilot, which was a great car. And and we went to Maggie Lakes, which I'd heard all these stories about, and Quaker Meadow. We stopped in there first, and I'd never been to Quaker Meadow. And just like being there with my dad and with Kennard and hearing just the stories and then seeing that picture that was on the slideshow, just like what a beautiful place and what beautiful memories from their time there. And then I remember just when we hiked into Maggie Lakes, I think Kennard was in his late 70s, but he did awesome. And I was just so impressed. And then Dad and Kennard were looking for this Dutch oven that they had buried back in the whatever 60s. And they didn't find it, but just the fact that they remembered the place where they had buried it and like had used it year after year and then buried it again. And so it's just such fun just to be with them and kind of remember their history together.
I'm Mark Woodward. I'm Tasha's sister, and my earliest, I'm Tasha's brother. Tasha is my sister. I'm so sorry. My earliest memory of Kennard, I think I was less than 10 years old, was of him banging a pot in Yosemite National Park on a backpack trip to scare bears away. So I'm glad to hear from the video that he was famous for that long before I came around, I think. And then we did take a backpack trip that I was on when I was, I think, 12 years old, 81 miles across the Trans-Sierra, the High Sierra Trail. And we're preparing, as was mentioned in the video, our family, in memory of my dad, who was a lifelong friend of Kennard's, as is the Haworth family, a trip into the Sierras this summer. And as I approached the age my dad was then, and I think Kennard was about 9 or 10 years older, I am incredibly in awe of how Kennard backpacked across the Sierras at the age of 60 and well into his 70s, as Tasha just said. And just one other memory, Kennard was just such a wonderful, gentle spirit and helped us even when he was not backpacking. Marta, my wife here, her first backpack trip was in the Sierras up outside of Fresno, and Kennard arranged for us, drove us up, dropped us off, grilled and Margine, and grilled steaks for us the night before. And then when we couldn't make it to our planned destination, Kennard came and got us early from a different place unexpectedly, and then visiting him in later years at Friendsview Manor, always with memories of backpack trips, always with a picture and just a wonderful positive spirit. Kennard was such a fantastic influence on my life, and I'm so glad to get to participate in this. Thanks to the family for organizing this.
So I'm Jennifer. I am Lauren's wife, and I am very thankful that Kennard and Margine raised the son that they did, the godly influence that they've had on their kids and other people. It's fun looking at the screen because some of you I recognize, but all from different places, a lot from Quaker Meadow. But yeah, no, he was an amazing person, and my mother-in-law, what a woman of prayer. I'm very thankful, and I'm just thankful for the family. And thank you for all of you who are sharing with us. Greg, thank you for doing this, and for, Noel and Acacia for putting the slides together, just all the memories, the photos. I just have to tell you, I grew up not really liking having pictures taken, but coming into this family, I didn't really have a choice. So I'd much rather be on the back side of the camera. But, looking back, it's fun to see the memories and to have all those pictures, and seeing all the kids, all of you, grow up through the years. Looking through all those pictures is really cool. And so the legacy that he has left is precious. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you all for sharing, and thank you especially for being here today. I want to invite Ray to give some thank yous and some other information near the close of our service.
Thank you everyone for joining us today and honoring Grandpa. If any of you are interested in a memorial gift in his honor, we would all love for you to donate to Quaker Meadow in his name. As you guys were talking about it, I was thinking about it. I know for sure that 3 generations of Haworths have worked there formerly, but I believe 4 generations of Haworths have been up there. And recently, in the recent California wildfires, there were some close calls, but not a single building burned down at Quaker Meadow. And then I would also like to thank the many people who were integral in the creation of this memorial. Uncle Greg, Natalie, Steve, Annie, my dad, Noel, Acacia, Uncle Lauren, and Aunt Elaine. Thank you for celebrating Grandpa's life, and I hope you have a wonderfully blessed day.
Thank you, Ray. And we do have one more thing that is a surprise to the family that I'm pretty excited about. It's a well-known tradition from Quaker Meadow and from the Tresiacs, and so I'm going to turn it over to Catherine Tresiak to explain.
Talk.
Oh, well, oh.
Unmute and talk.
Unmute. Can you hear me? No. Okay. Dennis and I and our children and my parents and my brothers and my sisters, we cannot remember a time when Quaker Meadow Camp and serving at Quaker Meadow Camp wasn't a part of our lives. So after all the stories that you have heard today, you can only imagine that all the Haworths and the Coskellas are also a really important part of our family and our family memories. For Dennis and I, some of our very favorite Haworth memories happened during the 6 summers when we spent serving on staff at Quaker Meadow. Dennis was the camp manager, and I was the BMW, according to the staff, which was the boss man's wife. But actually, I ran the camp store. And fortunately, that camp store had lots of candy in it. During those 6 summers, at some point or another, all three Haworths, Noel, Lauren, and Elaine, served with us on staff. And any of you who have been on a camp staff know the kinds of deep friendships that are formed when you live and work together 24/7, but not just deep friendships, but a lot of the crazy silliness that goes on. So Dennis and I are looking at you, Lauren and Noel, right now. Margene would always come up and share with us, teach us all about the intricate beauty of God's creation. And then of course, Kennard, along with Noel and Lauren, would provide jaw-dropping entertainment for us all when he would cut down one of those huge trees around camp. And I don't remember who said it, but you're right, he would put it right down on top of a soda can. It was pretty amazing. Because Quaker Meadow is so far off the beaten path, you probably can tell that from a lot of the photos that were shared today. And we often needed to come up with creative solutions to get by. And that's how the tradition of the candygram was born, to honor staff members on special occasions. Several days ago, Greg asked if I would be willing to share a candygram this morning as a very Quaker Meadow way of honoring Kennard. It is really much more fun to share a candygram in person. But today on Zoom, photographs will have to do. But Margene, have no fear. The real candygram is going to be on its way up to Newburgh this week. And your only dilemma is going to be how to figure out what to do with all that candy. So without further ado, Here is the candygram. With love to all the Haworths and Coskellas. Quaker Meadow Camp can be found up a winding, rocky road at the top of a very tall mountain. It is a blessed and holy God space that has been treasured by your family for 3 generations. It began when Big Hunk Kennard fell in love with the kind and beautiful Mars Jean. Do you know how hard it is to find Mars bars these days? But I did. And then, as Beyonce might say, Kennard put a ring on it. Well, actually, he put a ring on Margene. And the two of them walked down the aisle of the Quaker Meadow Chapel to become Mr. and Mrs. Haworth. For 82 years, Quaker Meadow has created lifesaver holy moments for campers, young and old, to experience the bountiful goodness of God's love. And beginning with Big Hunk Kennard and the beautiful and kind Mars Jean, 3 generations of Abba's amazing Haworths have supported and served and sacrificed with joy to make this kingdom vision a reality. Here are just a few of our extra special Quaker Meadow memories of Big Hunk and Mars Jean. Of Kennard, our numero uno lumberjack, cutting down whopper-sized trees to keep our campers safe. And then, to help preserve the forest, he made the very smarty loving choice to plant a new tree for each one he cut down. For winter fresh trips up to the snow-capped mountain and of course the snow-capped chapel, cross-country skiing with Kennard into a Quaker Meadow winter wonderland. And as we've heard often this morning, for Kennard and his camera, capturing countless mighty and marvelous photographs around Quaker Meadow. If we were to crunch the numbers, his treasure trove of Quaker Meadow photos could be worth at least $100,000. For Mars Jean, sharing with so many her passion for the good and plenty flora and fauna around camp, opening up our eyes to the really dazzling beauty of God's creation. Actually, there are really too many memories to count. Of bears in the trash stock, of delicious Quaker Meadow coffee cake made by camp kitchen cooks Margene and Elaine, of starburst gazing at the Milky Way through Kennard's telescope, and late night snickering over silly camp pranks. But perhaps one of Mr. and Mrs. Haworth's best gifts to Quaker Meadow and to all of us came with the arrival of their 3 sugar babies, Noel, Lauren, and Elaine. Kennard and Margene instilled a passion for Christ and Quaker Meadow into these 3 musketeers, and then passed it on to their 10 grandchildren. Indeed, their story is a beautiful and holy expression of David's proclamation in Psalm 145, 3-5. Great is the Lord and most worthy of praise, One generation will commend your works to another. They will tell of your mighty acts. They will speak of the glorious splendor of your majesty and meditate on your wonderful works. Amen and amen.
Catherine, thank you so much for that. Thank you all for being a part of this service today. As we close, we are so grateful for you making the time to be here. And what we want to do is just kind of the last part of the thing today is to let you hear Kennard himself saying adios for now on the recorded Zoom call from last fall. And then that leads into one more song from Bill and Linda Seberg.
Adios for now.
Adios for now. Thank you all. It's really good to see you.
Adios. Bye.
They say that heaven's pretty and living here is too. But if they said that I would have to choose between the two, I'd go home, going home, where I belong. And sometimes when I'm dreaming, it comes as no surprise that if you look, you'll see the homesick feeling in my eyes. I'm headed home, going home, where I belong. While I'm here, I'll serve him gladly and sing him all these songs. I am here, but not for long. And when I'm feeling lonely, and when I'm feeling blue, it's such a joy to know that I am only passing through. I'm headed home, going home, where I belong. And one day I'll be sleeping when death knocks on my door, and I'll awake to find that I'm not homesick anymore. I'll be home. I'll be home, where I belong.
Thank you again, everyone. And you are welcome to sign off or to stick around and chat for a bit with the faces that are here on the screen, but we are officially finished with the program part of today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all. Catherine, that was amazing. And Terry,
Thank you. Thanks for what you sent. I've got it right here.
It was an honor to be able to talk about Kennard at that meeting, and to just remember who he was and what he stood for and what Quaker Meadow was all about. It was all about the lives being changed and growing the kingdom. So yeah, I was honored to be able to do that. So.
Thank you.
Hey, I want to say thank you, Greg. That was really good. Not only for what you did today, but for I guess really the pastor and the minister you were to Dad towards the end of his life. That was very, very much appreciated. So thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Uncle Greg.
Hey, it's really good to see some of you guys. Hi, Sam. It's good to see you. Thank you for participating. That was really nice. And Tom, I saw you on here too. You're another guy that hangs out with your, Tom, yeah, hi. And Dorothy, I can barely see you guys, but nice to see you. Yeah.
And Kenny, it's great to see you.
Nice to see you again, Noel. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
No, we had a hard time with lighting here, but this is not on. Anyway, we had a hard time with lighting here, but I'll never forget stories you told at that special hike we did for your milestone birthday, and hearing stories about you and Lauren and your dad up in that little cave that was near where we were camping, and how the girls, I think it was Lauren's girls, got to go up there and spend time in there. But I guess that shielded all of you back in the day from a rainstorm at night.
All right, I think we're going to sign off. I was going to say hi to the Cosans too, but it looks like they're off already. It was good to see them. Hi, Terry.
No, the Cosans are there. I see them.
Oh, okay.
It's
Hi,
good to
George.
see you guys.
Yeah.
Good to see y'all.
Kaylin and Roger, thank you for being here.
They're saying something.
Good. Thank you all.
It was a wonderful tribute. Thanks for setting it all up.
Dad, I tried to ask you to unmute if you wanted to say something, so there should be something to click there.
Well, Mom's been talking for 10 minutes, but
Hi, Natalie and Nolan. Hi, Margene, Aubrey, and Elaine, and hi, Haley. Hi, Greg.
Hi.
Thank you for including us. It was wonderful.
for sure.
Thank you for being here.
We will miss seeing him, but we know where he is.
Oh man, did Terry leave? I was going to say something. I remember when I saw her face pop on the screen, I remember that first time I met Terry was actually at Forest Home, and Elaine and I had just started dating, and all these people were like, it was like a yearly meeting thing from down there, and people were like, oh, who's this? And Terry said, now you stop that. If he's good enough for Elaine, he's good enough for us. So I was always thankful for that.
Yes. Very.
Yeah, this is Tom Westerfield. Just wanted to say hi to Margene. Remember the old days at CE, those evenings right after you got married. You know, most of our memories are from the old church on Grant when you were real active there, and it's sure good to see you again. We made a trip up there Oregon about 3 years ago in our motorhome, but missed you. We drove around the complex, but couldn't see your pickup. That's the only car I ever remember Kennard having was a pickup with a shell on it. Must have been before Hondas came out. But anyway,
It's
so
very
good
hard
to
for
see
him to
you.
get rid of.
Yeah, I remember that pickup many times. Went up there and up to Quaker Meadow, dropping trees in the wintertime and driving soda cans and stakes in the ground. I remember the chainsaw sharpener that Kennard had that worked on his pickup. He was so proud of that thing. We sharpened more chainsaw blades than we really needed to, just trying to messing around with that sharpener. It was really great. Ran on the battery of the pickup. But yeah, sure good seeing you again. Want to say anything?
It's good to see all of you.
There's Haley.
We can go, or do you want to stay in?
Well,
All right, that's probably the safe amount of silence to actually stop it. I'll stop the recording and we can all head out, I think. Thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.